Good evening. From a technical point of view, I should point out I just had it pop up saying we're not on Facebook. Facebook's decided to crap itself tonight. So, soz.
No.
All right. So if you guys know anybody who's watching it on Facebook, refer them over to one of the other apps that we are live on right now. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show. For those listening, this is Sean Ackland alongside Bree Elliott, Paul Barlow, and the Youth MP for Banks Peninsula and political wunderkind, Ruby Love Smith. I love that word. I always look for an opportunity to use it. Ruby, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I've got to say that's an introduction I don't think anyone's used for me before. So
I'm just so happy to have another girl here, Ruby.
Hell yeah.
We're always
not enough of us online for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We're always.
Sorry, I'm going to post the link on Facebook for people. So you guys keep talking amongst yourself. Tell me about your week.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I've been planning some cool events that I'm speaking at. I'm going to be speaking at like a kindergarten sort of conference type thing with a bunch of ECE teachers. And then I'll be doing an online webinar as well. So I'm just planning all of that at the moment. It's been really fun. I feel like I'm getting all these opportunities, which has been really cool and like one of the upsides of putting my face out there for sure. What have you guys been up to?
Literally moments ago, I was watching the Stalked documentary. I'm sure that has been in the news lately. It may be a relevant topic tonight. For those who don't know, it's a documentary centered around 3 victims of stalking in Aotearoa, Jazz Thornton, and 2 others. And it's a very hard watch, a very compelling watch. We can probably speak more to that later because it has been in the news recently about the stalking crimes bill, and it recently been made a criminal act in New Zealand, long overdue, because apparently, and I just saw the Herald posting that there is controversy as to which politician, which MP or cabinet minister should be taking credit for the bill. So I think that could be something for us to maybe talk about later on. But yeah, for those who haven't seen it, Stalked, I'm watching it on Neon. I think it's also on Sky. So very good viewing. Ruby, throw it to you. How has your week been?
It's been good. I got to be honest, I haven't been up to much. I haven't been studying for my law exam, which is on Wednesday, so I might be in a bit of trouble there. But, just getting back into the swing of lectures. I got back from Women Deliver in Melbourne a week ago. And so kind of the debrief from that, trying to settle back into school, it's quite a change of pace. So, yeah.
So you're a youth MP, and this is something I've always kind of wanted to that is a fascinating thing for me, the idea of youth MPs in New Zealand. Could you maybe educate the listener on maybe the average day or the average week in the life of a youth MP? What does that look like?
Yeah, totally. So I'm not a youth MP anymore. The program is actually, I think we're about 5 months. I think we started in February last year and it went till about May, June, kind of this time of year, maybe a little bit after. I don't know. It's an interesting program. It very much depends on which MP you're with, because for some people, they were shadowing their MP all the time, got to attend events with them. And for some people, they didn't hear from them the entire time. So for some people, it was just that 3-day event in Parliament, being able to give a general debate speech. And for some people, it was almost like an internship in their office. But I think for the most part, what we were asked to do by the Ministry of Youth Development was do some consultation in our communities. A few people went into schools to go out in different areas to engage with young people on specific topics. We all got given a different kind of portfolio, let's say. I think mine was around voluntary carers, and we were meant to go and engage with the young people in our communities, and we brought that back and we presented to the relevant ministers, which was really cool.
Who
That's
was
a really
the
good segue.
before?
Sorry, what was that, Paul?
Well, I'm just wondering, who did you represent? Like, who was the senior MP that you were there representing?
So I was there as Tracy McClellan's youth MP. She is a Labour list MP in Banks Peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I found that as well. I don't know if this is common knowledge, but because after I think, Ruby, you were part of the controversy about midway point of last year where you guys got the briefing of not being allowed to criticize the government. And that was actually, and I won't lie, that was the first time I even found out that we even had youth MPs. That was news to me. And I ended up Googling, using the old Google machine to find if there were any kind of other notable political figures who maybe got their start as a youth MP. And to my shock, one Ryan Bridge start as to my even greater shock, a Labour youth MP.
Oh, snap!
Oh.
The Scouters Bridge here. Youth MP for Darren Hughes when he was 22 years old.
Is he secretly pretending to be right wing so that like?
Surely not. No, he's not that good of an actor. No. I think Ryan Bridge has had one of the transformations that you often hear about. I think he's probably fallen into that cliche of, you're young and liberal and you get more conservative as you get older. This is a man who spent, years working alongside Mark Richardson, and I'm sure Mark Richardson was able to appropriately indoctrinate young Ryan into whatever the opposite of a wunderkind is. That is what Ryan Bridge is now. So yeah, it was very, very. I found that very fascinating. I feel like that's something we should talk about more. I would love to see that kind of board up. I would love to see Ryan comment on that.
I'd love to see photos.
Yeah, couldn't find photos. Yeah, sorry, they couldn't find any other information besides what was on Wikipedia.
I had a question for you, Ruby. You said that you were studying law, is that right?
I am as of right now, but I'm actually considering switching courses, so I might not be in a month.
Okay, I was going to ask, what's your dream job? Because for me, I'd love to be Madam Speaker when I'm old. I want to be 60-year-old Madam Speaker, sit down, I was wondering what your dream job would be.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I've really been enjoying doing a bit of work in the youth space with people like Gen Z Aotearoa. So I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of leaning NGO, that kind of charity sector potentially, or I don't know, maybe going down an advocacy route. I feel like there's so many options. I'm kind of just waiting for the wind to kind of blow me in a direction.
Yeah. The world's your oyster. Oh, cool. I love it.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to bring up a slide because we can, but before I do that, I should actually jump in and do the one super chat we've had come through so far from Spiderhoof, just saying kia ora. So glad I managed to catch the show live once. Yes, love it when people can do that. Also, loving that girl power is in the house tonight. Same, it is always brilliant. I always feel incredibly well educated when I've got smarter people, and I'm very lucky to be able to do that tonight. Surround myself with the smartest of people. So the first thing that we're going to bring up, since we have I think everybody here is younger than I am, which is not a bad thing, generally speaking. We had some news come out Friday that the government is getting rid of fees free for third year study after they moved it from first year to third year. There's about 35,000 students who fall into that kind of black hole in between where they missed out on getting it for free for the first year and now don't get it for free for the last year. As people who are much younger than I am and actually much more involved in education than I am, I'm kind of curious what the response has been that you guys have seen. I realize there hasn't been classes for the last couple of days. This came out Friday night. It was leaked by Winston. And David Seymour jumped online and said, yeah, this is a fucking awesome idea. Everybody loves it when acts do things like this to people. So what are your guys' reactions and what have you been hearing from within your communities about this?
I've actually been hearing from a lot of parents who are like, oh, just another thing for my kid to deal with, you know, especially because a lot of people at university are around 18, 19, they're not eligible for the benefit anymore, the job seeker. So there's a lot of limitations, especially for people that are right out of high school. And this is just another thing, another 12K added to their debt. I'm one of those people that got caught. And it's just, yeah, it feels like they're never there for the young people. Yeah.
So David Seymour did a Facebook post on it, I think it was yesterday, where he celebrated the legislation, and he said something where, in typical David Seymour fashion, he was right for the wrong reasons. He said that it was a big waste of money because it failed to net the outcomes that we had hoped for. And you would assume that when he means outcomes, he would mean in terms of the economy. Maybe it would kind of get more people, more disposable income, etc., etc. He's not wrong. The fees fee program did fail to net the desired outcome. But what he is not mentioning is why it failed to meet those outcomes. It failed because so many students whose fees we were paying for left our country, went to Australia. We were producing, here's the thing, it actually probably did net the desired outcomes just for the wrong country. Young people in this country looked at soaring rents, stagnant wages, collapsing public services, an economy increasingly designed around property speculation, and said, hey, I'm going to peace out. I'm going to take my fees-free education and go to a country that will actually value this. So in essence, this failure doesn't fall on the fees-free program. It falls on this party for creating very poor economic conditions.
What constitutes a failure?
If you're David Seymour, I would assume it would be kind of the net outcomes in the economy. However, I might be giving him a little bit too much credit. And
any credit for David is too much credit. There's a website called educationcounts.gov.nz. It's a tracking information site that's done through the Ministry of Education. According to them, we saw domestic students under the age of 20 saw an 18% increase in qualification completions in 2024. By contrast, students over the age of 20 saw only 3% increase in completions during the same period, which suggests that the first-year cohort was moving through the system more successfully than the older, non-fees-free demographics. Asian and Pacific peoples, these groups saw the highest increase in domestic completions, rising by 15%. Māori students, despite the broad systemic challenges, Māori student completions rose significantly, particularly in level 3 certificates, up 27%. The 7-year completion rate of bachelor degrees remained steady at 67%. It's been about that since 2011. And students who started degrees in 2017, 2018, the first fees-free year, the 8-year retention completion rate was 72%, which was higher than the 2015 to 2016 fees-free cohorts. So the data is showing, on average, a 71% completion rate by people who have had a year of fees free on them. Is that a success or a failure?
I think there's no doubt about it that it was a success. That's, however, from our metrics. David Seymour will say it's a failure because it cost a lot of money. That would be it. It cost a lot of money. It didn't cost as much money in the tax cuts to landlords. It didn't cost as much money in the scrapping of the inter-islander ferries. It didn't cost as much money for his charter school vanity project. But when it came to, trying to give young people something resembling a leg up, cost too much money.
It's also interesting, and Ruby, you'll probably be able to attest to this a little bit as well, but a lot of it's online now. So the way that you can access learning is changing. It's a lot more accessible for me. I live an hour and a half away from my university. So it's a lot more accessible for me, especially with the cost of living, to be able to access my lectures online and stuff like that. So I'd be interested to see what the people that stay enrolled because there's more accessibility now. What have you been hearing, Ruby?
Yeah, no, I've been hearing a lot. I think for young people, right, it's just a lot of worry for like a generation that has already had so much to worry about. But the one thing that I've been hearing over and over again that all the people I speak to have been saying, but I haven't really seen talked about in the media, is like the potential this has to exacerbate youth poverty. And I actually found this really interesting. There was a study done this year by the University of Auckland that found that 45% of surveyed students were struggling with food insecurity, not being able to afford meals, like skipping eating throughout the day. And this just has the potential to make things like that so much worse. And I don't think people realize, especially as government, with the same thing we've seen about youth benefits, that parents' income is not reflected for students, especially those who are living away from home. And this has just been, I think, such a big issue that young people are facing all the time that nobody ever really seems to talk about. But I just find it so ironic coming from the government that was harping on for a whole year about an hour of literacy. What was it? Reading, writing, and maths. Yeah. That's so passionate about education. They have to scrap the entirety of NCEA and redo the whole thing. But I think this just shows that that's a load of rubbish and they're actually just doing what will save the money. But I was interested in what you guys were saying around, is it a successful program? Which University of Canterbury, their data, 60% of their students have said that it incentivized them. But I just also feel that we shouldn't have to prove our worth to have access to education. That shouldn't be a test. Everyone should have the right to education and equal access. We should make it as accessible as possible, regardless of what academic results are coming out of it. Everybody deserves to have equal access to education. I feel like it's just a given.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I found over the last couple of days, because I've been involved head down doing like summits and meetings and things like that, there is a lot of people who sit there and go, education is going to university and getting a law degree or getting a communications degree or something like that. But this also covered people going in and becoming engineers. This covered people going in and doing the hard mahi that keeps the infrastructure of the country ticking over. That kind of thing is covered under this as well. And suddenly, and one of the reasons that this scheme was introduced was because we were seeing a shortage of that kind of workforce in the country. People weren't going into that area of work for a while. And to see the numbers were going up and now they're cutting it again, it feels very much like we're being mean to the woke lefties who go out and get educated when they're really just shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Like these are people who have, especially David Seymour and Erica Stanford, they have very much expressed a lot of contempt towards teachers, and it does seem like educators in general, and that contempt does seem rooted in a suspicion that teachers and educators are indoctrinating their students. Now, we've got a teacher on this episode, and we have two students. We'll start with the students. Do you guys have either Bree or Ruby, have either of you ever felt pressured or indoctrinated by either a teacher, a secondary teacher, even a primary teacher? We can get onto the primary teacher example later, but either a secondary teacher or a lecturer, have you ever felt pressured into adhering to some kind of leftist, Marxist, woke, whatever, DEI, DUI, whatever ideology? Have you ever felt a pressure?
No, I haven't.
No, absolutely not.
No, I even feel like my lecturers currently they push back on a lot of my ideas. And I actually really hated that at the beginning, and I used to complain about it all the time. And now I really appreciate it because I'm like, that's actually what I need to learn.
That's important. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up because, yes, your lecturers are doing what educators are meant to do. Obviously, I am a teacher. Obviously, I am on the left. There have been moments, especially teaching history, where I have had to try and navigate that zone of, okay, I really don't want to be accused of indoctrination. And here's how you know you're not indoctrinating anybody as an educator. Are you only showing one side? are you showing one side? If you're showing only one side, you probably can be found guilty of indoctrination. If you are showing the kind of broad variables at play, like if you're teaching something like our economic recovery after World War II, if you are teaching that, that is going to be hard, because it's going to be hard to teach that without making it seem like this is such a great idea, because so many great things came of it. And then you're in that zone. If you are, so I can speaking from experience. And by the way, this is something that any teacher will tell you. We don't have time. We don't have the energy. We don't, like, geez, I'm flat out teaching these kids how to use a comma. Like, you think I know how to, do you think I've got the...
Even I can't send my kids to you to teach them how to eat woke sushi and quinoa. What's the education system if I can't do that?
Oh, he's so lazy, isn't he? Like, I heard that. I'm just like, you're so lazy. He did the woke thing with the solar panels last week as well, saying it's not woke because you're making money off it, or some David Seymour.
So my favorite thing about ACT is we know ACT are a bunch of stingy individuals who don't like putting out subsidies. Like they hate the idea of money for any kind of subsidy. But in Kirikiriroa, they have this big thing about parking in the CBD. They've got a big shopping mall to the north of the city called The Base. Everybody goes out there. It's free parking. It's got everything you want. And the CBD is one of those areas that's had a bit of a downturn. So you have a whole bunch of people going, well, free parking will fix it all. Up until, I think it's the end of this month, there is a subsidy in place that's paid for by a targeted rate. People in the CBD pay a rate that subsidizes parking for people to go there. That finishes at the end of this month, but the council is now determined to extend free parking out to 2 hours instead of 1 hour, that the council has to subsidize. The deputy member is a paid-up member of the ACT Party. He's the one pushing this. So subsidies for people to come shopping, but subsidies for kids' free education, no, can't do that.
Yeah.
Parking's so expensive too.
Yeah. Like, this is a party just built on contradictions and hypocrisies. It's absolutely shameless.
I was thinking, like, even when I learned in social studies about Hitler, for example, like that was one I remember. Like that my teacher at the time, Miss Jalil, I love you. I'm so sorry for how I treated you in that class. But at the time, she didn't tell us it was bad what happened. She let us reach that conclusion, you know? That was the whole point, was that we were meant to critically think and decide for ourselves whether or not.
And by the way, it's so much easier. It's so much easier with us just telling you the information and you guys just understanding it. It's just so much easier. So yeah, I would love you. You can always tell somebody has never stepped foot into a classroom when they levy that accusation at a teacher. You can always tell. I'm like, you have never been in a classroom. And the fact that we have our education minister and David Seymour, who has his hands all over education, they're saying it. They either know it's not true and they're lying, or they legitimately believe it. Which is
personally, I am, as a middle-aged white guy, I'm really creeped out by the fact that we have an associate minister for education who is childless and has connections to child sex offenders. Like, that feels like something we should be really concerned about.
And also that, without getting too tawdry, somebody who has his own kind of problematic past as well. And I'm not accusing David Seymour of anything. I will say that if my daughter, 14 years old, received a Snapchat, which is a social media app where the whole purpose is that the posts disappear and there is no digital footprint from a man who at the time was in his late 30s.
Well, it's also that responsibility to scale, right? Like, as a member of parliament, you're in a position of power, and that, you know, using a platform like that, or even I think just privately messaging in a not necessarily relevant to your work way, a young person who is underage, that's inappropriate behavior, whatever the intent was.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like even
Very-
you, Ruby, when you started on TikTok, you were like 17 at the time, and I was like, I'm gonna wait till she's 18 to message her, just because that's what you should do, because that is how it should be handled. I was like, I'm a straight woman. My partner's bisexual, but I'm a straight woman. But you wouldn't know that, and you might be like, who is this old lady messaging me? You know. So
no, totally, and I think that's that real issue as well with like people in like their comment sections, you know, especially in like ones like ours where it's political and you get a lot of discourse. People don't realize that sometimes you're responding to like 12-year-olds. Like, you know, if in doubt, don't do it, because it's just not worth the risk. And I don't know, just in general, I think it's a bit, people get too comfortable and forget that these are real people and you don't know them. And if you're on the internet, a platform like TikTok, majority of them will be under 18. Like, that's just the fact.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to go through some super chats, and then I'm going to ask you my first big question for tonight, which I've already kind of touched on. So this one from Gold, who does this every night, and I really appreciate it. We're 181 days, and we get to vote to reverse all of these terrible things the Coalition of Chaos are doing. And actually, I do have a question for you guys around this. How much is the message getting through to people that they need to be enrolled to vote before October 25th, or they don't get to vote?
That is the big struggle of what we do, because really the people who need to hear this are not following us. They're not the people who need to hear this. We're not showing up on their For You pages. So it really comes down to when I think it really comes down to this, and this is for really the people in the chat. Those, whenever you see kind of people in our space, encouraging people to enroll, informing people about the importance of enrolling. I think it would be great if you could just share those videos around, more so than any other videos or any other kind of content in general. I said this at the end of last month's episode, and it's especially prescient now with the week we just had. If gun to my head, if I had to make a bet, I believe that this election is going to happen before November 7th. I think Winston Peters is going to call a snap election. I think he's going to bide his time, which is maybe closer than you think if you look at recent polling. And I think he's going to call it, and I think he's going to start feeling a little snappy. And when that happens, those of you who are not enrolled, you don't get a say. Yeah. So you need to enroll as if with the urgency that this election is happening in 2 weeks from now, because for all you know, it may be. Yeah.
Right. Next one I've got come through here is from Laura. Seymour is a big waste of money. I'm not going to argue with that.
Sorry, could I just add to that? He is a big waste of money. And especially last week when we got that graph that was floating around social media of all the political donations that all of these parties receive. Like, if that graph could speak, it would say that money can do only so much heavy lifting for shitty ideas. Because the fact that this man gets more money, this party gets more money than the 3 left parties combined, 4 if you could include Top. And he only nets 8% of the vote. 8%. That's the value for money. Is that good value for money, Nick Mowbray?
And I think we need to remind National of how much they gave up for these guys, how much they were willing to sacrifice for these people to do what they've done. When they posted Happy Mother's Day, I was so happy to read the comments all being like, yeah, you hate women, National hates women. Like, yeah.
I didn't see that, but I'm so glad to hear they got called out for it.
Oh, yeah. When I saw that post, I was like, the social media gods have smiled upon me.
We'll touch on this a little bit later, but National do very well generally on social media around elections anyway. They pay a shit ton of money to have it happen. So I'm really glad to see people seeing through the bullshit, But we will go into that one a little bit later. Got another super chat here from Gold. How do these people not see that each decision they make cuts more and more potential voters? I think actually this week, over the last week, National has made a couple of announcements which feel very much like, fuck it, go to New Zealand first, or fuck it, go to Labour. We're going to increase the retirement age. That's something that New Zealand First and Labour are both really keen on going, nah, not going to happen. Asset sales, I've heard a little bit of rumblings about this weekend because it's something that National does on a regular basis. It feels very much like they're just trying to give things away at the moment and push voters out to other directions.
Or push Winston away.
Not going to work if you're giving him voters.
You're giving him voters. I don't know. When I saw that Christopher Luxon, he announced, imagine, can we just consider that he decided to wait until his party was hemorrhaging voters to New Zealand First, the old people party. He waited for that moment to announce that he would be campaigning on raising the retirement age. The thought crossed my mind, is he trying to kamikaze the National Party?
Feels like it.
And these are not the actions.
I mean, he's doing a really good job and he should totally stay in the role.
Oh, absolutely. You do you, Luxon.
Yeah.
But these are the actions of a leader losing support within his own party, and rather than stepping aside and letting somebody else within National take his spot, he's deciding to choose to sink the campaign himself. I had that thought. Like, the announcement carried this very kind of, if I'm going down, I'm taking everybody else down with me. That's what it felt like. That coupled with the elimination, the scrapping of the fees-free stuff, it seems like within the space of a couple of days, they alienated middle-income, middle-aged, soon-to-be retirees. Who votes National besides those people?
Well, exactly. Actually, with, like you say, with that, the cutting of the fees free, this is the government of middle income New Zealand. Well, that's the middle income families who want their children to go to university.
I will also mention, because Christopher Luxon grew up in a household with very learned, educated parents who both of whom would have been the beneficiaries of free university. And we've got to also, and this is a connection that I don't see kind of talked about enough, the fact that so many wealthy Kiwis in this country were as successful as they are because of free university, whether it be because of their parents or because they themselves were beneficiaries of it. The fact that they didn't have this mountainous student loan hanging above their head for the first 2 or so decades of their adulthood would have been an enormous benefit, an enormous advantage that they would have had over your generation, Ruby and Bree.
Showing my age, I remember the protests in the 90s. I remember going to those when they were introducing much higher rates for student loans, student allowances, and the fees that you had to pay because they were taking it out from being a fees-free education. And just the anger of people going, these MPs, literally the MPs who have got free education, and now they're forcing us to pay for it. It was tangible. I will never forget having to go through those.
I found it's been really people are very receptive to the idea that, the boomers, they used to get it paid for, and that was smart. And because it meant we could invest in our workforce and we could get people into rural areas, and it was very smart. And maybe the old way is the good way sometimes. And I had quite a few comments on my latest post about this fees-free thing from older people saying, I was going to vote for Winston and now I just don't know who to vote for because this is my grandkids, who I'm already helping. And my grandma helps me while I'm studying. She gets me a vegetable basket thing every fortnight for our family, from the local co-op, just to help us out because it's so hard as a student. Yeah. So that is really weird to alienate your own voters.
Can I just, you brought up the baby boomers before Brie, and I will never pass up an opportunity to pile on the baby boomers. And this is in regards to raising NZ Super. And I kind of want to get this out there. I think it's going to suck for a lot of the baby boomer and Gen X generation who potentially will have to kind of start their retirement a little bit later than expected. Don't think I'm discounting that. I will say that the millennials and Gen Zers, we're the ones who are going to feel the brunt of this, of the scrapping of the raising of the super age. We're going to feel the brunt of this because it has a massive NZ Super. We can all agree it does come with a massive cost, and it's going to be the millennial and Gen Z generations who are going to bear the brunt of it. And it's due to it. And people are saying, "Oh well, we have to raise it because people are living longer." Wrong. People are not living longer. Baby boomers and Gen Xers are living longer. This is true. And you can look this up. Millennials and Gen Zers are the first generation in modern history who are projected, that's the key word, projected to have a lower life expectancy than the generations before them.
Because we don't even have like 1% of the wealth. Like we're literally poor. Like because I know Gen Z's like in the deep.
There's so many factors that didn't affect baby boomers as much. We've got declining public health, obesity, stress, inequality. The food we eat isn't to the quality that it probably should be compared to what baby boomers and Gen Xers had. That's without mentioning chronic illness, a cost of living crisis. And as much as I'm kind of going, woe is me on behalf of the millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, I've got bad news. It's even worse for you guys.
And they'll memes test it when we're old.
You guys have been tested. And like younger generations are being told by the National Party that we are expected to subsidize a standard of living that we ourselves will never receive. Think about that. Like I think like this party, it feels like generational warfare. It feels
That's a really nice segue that I can use. Thank you. Thank you for the setup, Sean. Here is a list of 13 things that the government has done since it got into power that disproportionately impact people under the age of 25. They include the new parental income test for job seekers aged 18 to 19, the removal of youth public transport subsidies. So if you're in a place like Auckland where you still have free transport for under 5, that's now subsidised by council, not by the government. Benefit sanctions and traffic light systems with stricter compliance for people under 24. The narrowing of apprenticeship boosts, restricted student loan living cost payment increases, changes to NCEA and back to basics education reforms, the reintroduction of boot camps, the repeal of fair pay agreements, reduced funding for total mobility services, removal of voting age consideration, removal of Section 7AA of the Oranga Tamariki Act, removing same-day voting enrolment, and now removing fees-free study. This is just a short list. Does this give you guys pause for thought about what the government's actual attitude is to anybody under the age of 25?
It's, yeah, like it does. For me, it kind of speaks to a real pessimism that they have that they may not be kind of conveying in regards to the future of our country. These are the kind of policies that if I were a neoliberal austerity merchant, these are the kind of policies that I would push forward, believing that we are at the end. Like it feels kind of like these are the kind of guys who love to kind of gauge what is and is not a good investment. To me, this feels like they have looked at young people and felt like, okay, well, you guys are not a good investment. And hence these measures. That's where my brain goes.
Question for you on this one, Ruby. As part of that group of youth MPs who are told don't criticise the government, when you see a list like this, how much of this feels like the government knows we want to criticize them because we are the group that tend not to vote for them?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I mean, obviously, like, I've done a lot of work with Make It 16 as well. And this is like the kind of thing that we see when we talk to them. They just don't want to give anything to young people. And just in general, like their attitude of profit over people. This is why they target middle income New Zealand in their election campaign when low income communities are the people who are literally living in poverty right now. They only care about the people who will vote for them. They're only worried about who's making party donations. That's why we see all these awful policies come through for people in like the oil industry, for the landlords. Their pure incentive is what they can get out of other people. And if you're not part of those groups, they're not interested. They're just going to save money wherever they can.
Ruby's doing a terrible job at not criticizing the government.
Keep it up. Definitely keep it up. I did love that comment that came through from Nate before, actually. I don't know if you guys saw it when it popped up on the screen. And I'm sorry, Sean, this is going to cover your face when I do this. But Ruby for Prime Minister, is that a possibility?
Thanks, Nate. Oh, look, probably not, but you never know.
I should also respond to this one that's come through from Mr. Arvids, because I don't think we actually dealt with this at the top of the show, about why Jordan's not here. His mum's had a power cut, so he's gone out to help her, but no power means no access to the internet. So unfortunately, Jordan has had to send his apologies again. Nothing too sinister. He's just been a good kid.
On Mother's Day.
Yeah. Ruby, you mentioned something before, and I think it was very refreshing to hear that from somebody who I would hope has political ambitions. I love how you just called out the monetary interests of the National Party and the right-wing coalition in general, because, again, I don't think it gets touched on enough. You hit the nail on the head. They are not here to serve us. They are here to serve the people who keep the party afloat. And can you really blame them? Can you really blame them? Can you really blame them for doing the bidding of corporate donors? Because Lord knows their ideas aren't enough to get them over the line. They can't rely on just the merit of their own policies. So I think they're kind of their inclination towards their donor interests is almost at this point a survival instinct. Yeah.
I'd love to see what they're doing for young people. I wonder if there's anything on that list.
I think it depends on the definition of young people. For a lot of them, like Winston, anyone young is slightly lower than the age of retirement.
Yeah, we're just babies. We have time.
Yeah.
All right. Earlier in the week, I told people that we were going to be doing an episode that focuses on the fact that we are now 6 months out from the election, like 6 months minus 1 day, I think, officially out from the election. And this is when we're going to start to see campaigns ramp up. This week alone, we've already seen some really out of the gate kind of campaigning from National. They're like taking a target at Tangi Utakeri's new bill, where he wants to wipe people, or give people the option of wiping their past record if it's like a little misdemeanor crime from 10 years ago. It has to be more than a decade old, some old parking tickets, that kind of thing. And Nationals jumped on it going, oh, wow, they're soft on crime. Sam Uffindell, bed leg boy, saying, we really think this is a bad idea. We've got to make sure that, you know, people who are criminals are held to account. They don't seem to understand the irony of how stupid that sounds. So I figured I've got some questions that people have actually sent in on the video that I put out earlier this week that I'd love to get your guys' feedback on, talking about what your processes are and how we can help them with the tools to get through the next 6 months of bullshitty bullshit. So if you guys are up for that, we can give it a go.
Yes, especially with the removal of the BSA.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So first of all, you all have very different styles of content and ways to create content. Some of you guys focus on video creation. Some of you use a mix of video and like text posts on social media. I'm really curious to see how you approach the content that you make. What ways do you try and ensure it's hitting the right message while still being true to the message that you want to get across? Who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Sure.
I started just making videos, and I think those are good. And I try to just make videos on things that I think are maybe getting a bit too nuanced or complex for just a text post. But I do really enjoy writing. And so I found Facebook really good for that. And I feel like I can make more quantity of posts. And I always put text on my videos as well, just because I didn't realize how many not just deaf but also blind people watch my videos, so I try to have any sort of accessibility things on there that I can. But yeah, I was saying this yesterday to an MP that I met. I was like, I'm going to post a photo of us and I'm going to talk about what we talked about, because I think that people find that really interesting and people want to know more about their MPs. And I always find if I add a relatable story about myself in a story, I can show how I relate to it and why I care about it. That always helps, and always helps a message go further. So I'm trying to think a lot lately about how I can use other people to help get a message out on things that maybe I don't have a direct experience of, but they do. So yeah, that's how I approach it. Very mixed matched, just in the flow. I normally wake up and I'm like, post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't look at my phone before I've had coffee for that very reason.
Yeah, it's quite a. I'm a little bit late on kind of answering that one because it's quite a loaded question. If I had to sum up how I approached it, it's kind of like, is this getting a big react? Is this kind of evoking a visceral reaction from me? And I try to kind of and. Truthfully, oftentimes it's me kind of muttering to myself in the car, kind of going on the way to work. And that usually starts as the big idea for a lot of my posts. And I kind of try to kind of center the rest of my content around that, try to find kind of patterns maybe, and kind of like look at macro factors, maybe historical factors behind a lot of what I'm talking about. I'm also very much aware, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn in saying this, guys, the content that we cover is New Zealand politics. This is not something that a lot of people find particularly interesting. This is something that a lot of people will, in fact, oftentimes the mere whiff of anything political showing up on their social media feeds, they just keep swiping. Mm-hmm. So you do need to kind of try and find a way to speak to that audience. You've got to try and find that way of hooking them in. I kind of almost see us as storytellers first, and commentary second, maybe education second, commentary third. And yeah, I have been doing a lot more written text through Facebook, especially. If I'm being honest, Facebook is probably my favorite.
Same.
Just because it's so predictable. You know, there's no real surprises with Facebook. TikTok is all over the place. You one video that you're confident is going to like break through gets like 300 views, and then some dumb video. Well, not dumb video, but a video that you're like, this is really niche. People aren't going to care about this. That will like skyrocket, and it doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason behind it. And also TikTok is very kind of, it's kind of dodgy in terms of privacy. It's dodgy in terms of there's a lot of kind of things about that give me pause, and there seems to be more security through the meta apps. So yeah,
that's why I crack up when people say that we're clout chasing or anything along that line. So I'm like, how many followers do you think I'm expecting talking about education policy? Yeah, I hope I reach America.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's another thing. This is New Zealand politics. And by the way, guys, I will say this, and we have kind of spoken to people in the space about this. They'll tell you that oftentimes a massive increase in followers can be a bad thing for your viewership, because now it has happened with a few people. They have like one video that may not be politics related, that might just explode in views and gain all this traction and get that content in front of the wrong eyes. And suddenly your content is geared towards those people who are more likely to flick you away on social media. And that ends up being bad long term. There's a lot of people, you may see it, there's a lot of people who have hundreds of thousands of followers that get like 200 or 300 views a video. That happens. So yeah, we are not clout chasing. In fact, clout chasing is a very quick way to not get clout. And I know that's kind of, I hate that word, clout.
No, that's
scary, yeah.
That's such an
What about
interesting
you,
point,
Ruby?
because that I think Sean's point was really interesting, because that's actually what happened to me initially, because I was never going to do the content creation. It wasn't even something I was thinking about. I just was getting some cool opportunities. I was like, oh, well, wouldn't it be cool to have like a video memory of this, like when I post photos on my Instagram? So I literally used to do little vlogs like, come with me to Parliament. And then I uploaded my youth Parliament speech and it blew up. But it actually blew up in the UK, because I have a British accent. So all of the comments were, oh, the NHS is free, healthcare is free. And I was like, does this look like the House of Commons to you? And then from there, I guess it was a lot of watching people like you guys. And I kind of got to a point where I was like, what you guys are doing is so cool. Now that I have a bit of a following, why don't I try that? And so I think the angle I take, I try to ask myself two questions. The first is, what do young people need to hear from me? I have a lot of people who come up to me at university and say, you know, you're the only really way I hear about politics when you come off my For You page. And my generation don't watch the 6 o'clock news. They don't have news apps on their phones. So I think they are, a lot of the times they are interested, but they have no means of finding the information. And then the other thing I try and ask myself is, what do other people need to hear from me as a young person? Because we have everything going on at the minute under this government, and it's affecting so many different communities. But my generation, especially young women, aren't represented in commentary on platforms like TikTok, because it's such a hostile environment. I mean, the crazy messages I receive on a daily basis, I understand why they're not, but it's really important that we as young people are able to take that space, because as you saw in that list before, so much of this is affecting us. We're the ones in 20 years who are going to be running the country, and we want to build up our young people to have the capability to do that and to understand the systems that are currently actively seeking to harm us.
Hashtag Ruby for PM.
Sorry, yeah. I did that. Where my mind went, Ruby, was actually, if we could kind of talk about this. I don't know where Paul's gone. If we could talk about this for a second. I spoke at the beginning about the Stalk documentary. It was, and Bree, you have alluded to it in the past. What I often hear kind of female influencers, not influencers, but you know what I mean, kind of female content creators describe, especially in their DMs, as a completely different experience to what I get. And I think it's very important, especially for maybe men in the chat or kind of male creators as well, to understand that our social media experience is not the same as the average female social media experience. And if you watch the Stalk documentary with Jazz Thornton, you very much understand that. 1 in 5, and I don't want to scare anybody here, but it's good to know, it's good information to know. In the documentary, it was said that 1 in 5 female social media content creators will get stalked throughout their time posting on social media. And that's probably no surprise to you two, I'm sure, given the kind of comments you receive and the private messages you receive. And which is why I think this stalking, the recent kind of announcement that stalking has been made a criminal violation, is tremendous news. tremendous news. And if we could kind of just speak to that for a moment, because I do think it's a story that has gone under the radar. Basically, I want to make sure that I give credit in the right spaces, because I know that there were a lot of moving parts to this legislation. I will first, as much as it pains me to say, like to give credit to Paul Goldsmith. He did introduce it. You can't take that away from him. I'd like
try.
we can try. We can do that later. We can do that later, because old Goldie was getting a little bit liberal, shall we say?
High on the list either, I don't think.
Yeah, he was getting pretty liberal with how much he had to do with that. But he did. He introduced it. So points for Goldsmith there. But Tamitha Paul, there were a lot of amendments that Tamitha Paul made in this policy. The original bill that Goldsmith put forward said that stalking could only be constituted a criminal act if it happened 3 times within 2 years. Tamitha got that down to 2 times, which is a massive difference. And again, have to give credit where credit is due. She got these amendments through working through bipartisanship with Mark Mitchell, with Chris Bishop. So I think, I want to make sure that we get this fully, kind of get the story here right, because there were a lot of moving parts. I think Tamitha deserves a lot of credit for this. I think she deserves more credit than Paul Goldsmith, who tried to kind of treat this as a National Party initiative. It wasn't. This is very much a Green bill that a Green MP worked tirelessly on. So, yeah.
I think there's also like a big misconception that a lot of the sort of terrible behavior online that female content creators receive is from men. Like a lot of the hate I get is from women, and other women, other young women, other old women. I actually had a stalker when this is so weird, when I was like 14, 15. I had like a boyfriend at the time, and his ex-girlfriend became a little bit obsessed with me, and she would turn up at like gigs that I was performing at that I hadn't posted about, and she would like send me emails from like fake email accounts. And a lot of the interactions I've had that have been creepy have actually been with women. So yeah, I think it's just interesting to think about that. Like, it's not just you think it's just men. You think it's just creepy old men, but some of them are women, and it's like kind of weird.
Yeah, it is. I think it was an interesting point that Sean made about giving credit where credit's due, because I just think it's so insane that this has taken this long. Like you, Brie, I was stalked and harassed when I was 15 by a 30-year-old man who I didn't know. Went down to the police, and they told me he hasn't actually broken the law, which was just the most insane thing to hear. But I'm not gonna sit around and be in debt and feel existentially grateful to Paul Goldsmith for giving us a right that we should have, for doing less than the bare minimum, something that should have been done years ago. And I think there's so many things like this where, as women, we're expected to be grateful, as like minority communities, oppressed communities in general, that we're expected to be grateful when we're given something that never should have been taken from us in the first place. So I definitely think credit where credit's due, but also, this is, I'm not the kind, I would feel strange to sit there and applaud when the reality is the 30-year-old man who did that to me and numerous other girls in my area is still wandering around and doing who knows what.
Yeah.
It's always eye-opening whenever I hear, like, I said 1 of 5, and right away you two guys go, oh, yep, no, I've been stalked.
At 15.
Yeah. By a 30-year-old.
Yeah, who I didn't know. That's the other thing. People are like, oh, it must have been like surely it was. I was like, no, this is literally like a random stranger. It was his. I think I was. They said it was. I was like the third young, like, underage girl to complain about him in my area, and yeah, there was just nothing they could do.
Oh, guys, we've got to do better. I don't know what to say. We've got to do better, boys.
But I thought the government was tough on crime.
Yeah.
I've got a super chat, and I apologize for vanishing before my internet just was like, nah, screw you, I'm not going to work. I've got a super chat here from Eric Rader going, just want the panel's opinion on the autistic man locked up in the Mason Clinic in Auckland for 21 years. His mum is now going to the UN Human Rights Court despite the Supreme Court judgment. Have you guys heard about this?
No, I haven't heard about this.
Okay, so there was a story on RNZ, I think it was last week, about this. Basically, a young man by the name of Jay, which is a pseudonym here, he's been held alone in a secure wing at the Mason Clinic. His mother has taken his case to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, arguing that the government failed to act on a Supreme Court ruling that made his detention arbitrary. The Supreme Court ruled in August 2025 that the legal test used to detain him was unlawful. A family court hearing to re-examine the detention was delayed until late 2026, which means the state has to issue an interim order for continued detention, which is what's happening at the moment. Family Court Judge Penelope Ginnon previously described his confinement as noisy, construction-adjacent unit as untenable. So the mum has taken this to the United Nations to get some action, basically.
I can't think of anything worse. Like, my partner's quite sound sensitive, and I get a little bit like that with light and stuff. And I just can't imagine being sound sensitive in a noisy room that's just like not at all comfortable for you. That sucks, man. Well, good on his mum. Mum of the day for Mother's Day.
So yeah, that's crazy. So 21 years ago, that's not long. Like, I know it sounds like a long time, but 21 years, that's only 2005. This sounds like, sounds like real archaic.
Wait, has he been in there for 21 years, or is he 21?
No, he's been
detained for 21 years.
So he's got 21 additional years from this point, or from a certain point?
No. He has been in the Mason Clinic for 21 years.
Since 2005, right? Yeah, that wasn't that long ago, guys. Helen Clark was Prime Minister when that happened. It
says here, he has been detained for 21 years in a secure hospital or residential facility after he was found unfit to stand trial over minor offending, including breaking windows.
Oh my goodness. God, get him out. Like, it sounds like that's my initial reaction. It sounds like you're criminalizing autism. That's what it seems like, being
Not that autistic people throw things at windows, but that's not what Sean means.
No, I'm talking about having the inability to stand.
Yeah.
To stand. But yeah, I should elaborate. That is crazy. But that's the kind of I don't know what else to say. Let's start a petition. If you're in the chat and that outrages you, let's get a petition out there. Let's help Mum out. He shouldn't be in there. He shouldn't be in there with loud noises. And I don't want to get too too personal here, but like, I will kind of confess, and I'm sure you guys may have kind of picked up on it. I have been like, I've never taken an actual test, but there has been a lot of there has been a lot of suspicion from people going back to when I was a young child, even up until now, that I may as well be on the spectrum, and I'm very sympathetic to that. So that is outrageous. So I'm really sorry to hear that, because that is definitely the takeaway from that story, that we are criminalizing autism, that this is a kid who wasn't able to who didn't have the faculties to be able to stand trial, and we've locked him up for 21 years. And it seems like a story you would have heard from like the from the 60s. Or the 50s. This happened in 2005. I was a teenager.
Yeah. It's still happening now.
Yeah, Ruby, I was a couple of years younger than you. Like, this is not that long ago.
Right, I get it. I'm old. Stop it.
Ruby sent me her email address today, and it had her birth year, 2008. And I can't tell you how bummed out I was when I saw 2008. I'm guessing that's when you were born. That's when I graduated.
Dang, that's crazy.
That really
I'm
bummed
not
me
gonna
out.
comment. I'm definitely not
I'm
commenting.
sorry.
But I love finding people's email addresses from the early days of the internet. I remember I had to take an email address down, a private email address down for one of the former mayors of Hamilton, and it was something like My Little Pony Lover 1978. and I'm just like, this is unbelievable. I wish I could tell everybody who it was. I'm not going to do that because I'm not that mean. But yeah, it was early days. I got another question for you guys. This one's from another viewer from the video the other day. How do you spot a bot and recognize manipulation? How do we tune our algorithms and find ways through the mess to get accurate policy information without the spin?
How do you spot a bot? I think this is pretty easy. They usually don't have a profile photo. They will have a profile photo, but it'll be like a pop culture image. You know, it won't be their actual face. And if it is their actual face, it will usually have like 20 friends, no social media presence. They're usually pretty easy to spot.
Mm-hmm. We used to send each other when we all started. We had like a little group chat, and we'd all send each other like, "Do you have Bob Jones?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, Bob. He's the usual, you know."
Bob Jones, one of the greats.
You see them come on they'll be on everyone's.
It's so funny looking at all you guys' comment sections. It's all the same people, and even my friends, like as young, like some of my friends who do it, who are like my age, even though we're in such different corners of the internet, and we'll still be like, I saw that person in your comment section. They were in my comment section last week.
Glenn Price.
Let's treat this. Let's treat these people like Voldemort and not mention their names.
I don't think
they would be so petty at the idea that we're talking about them. But I will say, kind of like you, and something that I will always do is if they leave like a really mean, nasty comment, I always just find it funny to just reply, "Oh, love the energy," or "Hate comment, no notes," or "You seem like a cool guy, let's hang out." You seem like a cool lady.
And then delete them or block them because they get a notification saying there's a response, and then they go to check the notification. They can't see what the response was.
I do that a lot.
A nice way to screw with your head.
I always comment, "You're an idiot," and then I'll block them. And I'm like, there we go.
Well, our friend who I'd like to give a real shout out to, if you're not following Jackson, he's on the financial side of TikTok, but also talks a lot about he really gets into the weeds on the economy. Jackson, he was telling us something that he does, and I'm like, that's awesome. What he'll do is he'll send them a private message, and he'll make sure that they see it and start typing. And as soon as they're right at the cusp of them sending it, he'll block them.
It's brilliant.
Not go through.
Like Jackson's an evil genius, so I think that's. I've never done it, but yeah, it's definitely on my my social media to-do list. I will say, be careful with who you engage in because, and this is really kind of for the real people, the real detractors. I would recommend, and they might throw their toys out of the cot at me saying this, just block them. Here's why. Not because you are afraid of debate, not because they're not even necessarily because their opinion isn't worth anything to you. It's more this is kind of like social media 101 stuff. The people you engage with or the people who view your content should be the people who you want to view your content. If you are kind of engaging with people who are antagonistic towards you, you've got to consider, if I engage with this person, that means my content is going to reach this person, which means it's going to reach people like them. And my content is not for them. If it lands on their FYP for any other reason, maybe their lefty friend shared it, great, but my content, I want it to land in front of the right eyes. So if you, that would be kind of some advice I'd give to anybody who wants to kind of get into the space that we're in. Reply and engage with honest actors. I'm not saying block all right-wing accounts. That's not what I'm saying, because there are people in the right-wing space who do engage with you in good faith. But if you see somebody who's engaging with you in bad faith, maybe they're hurling insults or whatever, just block them. Your content's not for them. You'll be doing them a favor. You'll be making a more harmonious, you'll be creating a more harmonious social media experience for them. And for yourself while we're at it. So, yeah.
Everyone else agrees?
Advice. Yeah, great advice.
Yeah, no, that was a good summary.
Okay, perfect. So I love when that happens.
Sean.
All right, next question for you. How do we engage on bullshit topics that we know will be damaging, but they keep pushing, like the rates cap was the example that was given. Rates cap's obviously going to mean that a council can't spend money on things it needs to spend on. No councils that have gone back and redone their budget since the election have been able to get it under the proposed rates cap. There are some places like Selwyn, idiots, who voted in a council promising lower rates and are going to end up with a rates increase of close to 30% from the 6 that they were going to have. So I'm kind of curious, how do you engage on those topics that they're kind of like the talking points that the right-wing trolls like to use, or governments and political parties and politicians, like that example of Sam Uffendow that we mentioned before?
The council stuff is I'm not going to lie, it is a bit of a tricky kind of thing to navigate, because a lot of the time the people who will kind of argue with you on council spending, they'll always point to these kind of ridiculous, extravagant examples of, like with Tory Whānau, it was the Christmas tree or the toilets. And it's like, I think the best way to kind of approach it would be, listen, if you feel like there has been irresponsible use of our rates, and you can give me examples, I'm sure there's going to be a couple that even I would agree with you on. That the answer to that would be elect different people. It wouldn't be let's scrap their revenue stream. That's not the lesson we should take away from this. It would be like saying, oh, the Warriors played crap in the weekend. Let's take away 3 of their players. That doesn't sound like a very effective way for the Warriors to keep winning. Well, they're taking that same logic and applying it to our local government. So that's always the kind of angle I try to approach it from, of there are going to be kind of policies and there's going to be items of spending that I'm sure you're going to kind of take issue with and that I might take issue with. The answer shouldn't be, let's get rid of the revenue. The answer should be, how can we take this revenue and spend it more to our kind of liking? That would be the kind of way I would propose it, because you've got to consider National Enact. They're not talking about reform when it comes to council revenue. They're talking about taking away the revenue. They're very different things.
Looking at the broader picture, when it comes to bullshit topics, off the top of my head, the ones that come to mind are 49,000 fewer victims of violent crime. That's taken over a 2-year survey, and they're now giving you data from 1 year. It's looking at how people feel. It's not actual reported violent crimes. And that includes the post-COVID increase of crime that we saw happen once lockdowns and that ended. That kind of thing feels like a bullshit topic. Or we've got inflation down from 7.3 to 3.1 or whatever it is at the moment. We did that, and look what Labor did. When you come across that in your content, how often do you push back on it? Or do you push back on it? Or do you just sort of sit there and go, no, you're an idiot, and leave it?
No, I push back on it. How about you? How about you guys? I definitely push back on it.
No, same. I think specifically around the stuff of the pandemic and COVID and the economy at that time, because like misrepresentation of correlation. There was just so ridiculous trying to say that inflation was because of Jacinda when the problems we have with the economy are seen internationally because the issue there is COVID. That is quite clearly the causation. The similar factor around the world wasn't that everyone had a woman as prime minister or had a socialist leader. It was that there was a global pandemic. And I think some of those things, a lot of these things, like you say, are just really ridiculous. And I think actually often it is easy to push back on because there's so much inconsistency in their arguments that usually I think 9 times out of 10 we get like in our heads that, oh my gosh, they're going to come back with something I hadn't even thought of. But actually half the time there isn't anything for them to come back with because their argument had no grounds in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a conversation with somebody at work, and it was one of the young learning assistants. Somebody made a passing comment of like, would you ever consider entering politics? And the person said, oh no, I'm not smart enough for that. And I immediately chirped up, neither are they. Neither are they. And that has been something that has really been eye-opening. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. That has been something that has been so eye-opening to me, that a lot of the times when you kind of navigate these spaces and kind of find out things about these people, you're like, you don't know, you know barely anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these guys are not in the know, not nearly as in the know as you would think. And half of them, especially in National and Act in New Zealand First, if they were to say, cut taxes, and you say, and then what? They wouldn't be able to answer you. They wouldn't. Mm-hmm. You say, cut taxes. They say, and then what? Nothing. And I'm including our Prime Minister in that list. I would love to see an interviewer just say, all right, Lachlan says we're going to cut.
I'm going to put this out here, okay? I realize that we have a very long country, like it's quite a large, physically long country, but if you are running or organizing a Meet the Candidates event, I would love to be considered to be the MC. I would love to be considered for the MC role. Just flick me a message through whatever platform it is that you can find me on. If I can do it, I will do it. It's not always easy for me to get to like Invercargill, for example, but I am really keen to go down and sit down face to face with a lot of these bullshitting MPs and just go, right, this is what you're saying, but you're wrong, and give me evidence. I'll go into that a little bit later as well. But yeah, it's an offer I'm making out there. If you need an MC, I am happy to put my hand up for it if I can.
I will put my hand up as well, but I do have one request. Don't tell the person that I'm the interviewer, that I'm the MC.
Oh,
I like to be surprised.
I did not put my hand up for that.
I had it happen during local elections last year, that there were some people who were like, I'm not going to get involved in any kind of debate or anything if Paul is the one who's moderating. And like, wow, running shit scared then. I'm quite happy to do it.
It's like, okay, well, you don't get to be in Parliament if you can't handle, like, and I'm speaking for myself here, if you can't handle some guy on Facebook, like, you can't handle a country. Yeah. Simple as that.
I feel like this is
okay. Yeah.
I feel like this is why we end up fighting ideology all the time, because they can't actually argue their policy. Like they can't argue why having prisons is good, because none of the data supports what they're trying to say. So we have to fight ideology. Because they can't actually argue the policy.
Yeah.
All right, next question for you. What is a good response when someone says that they're not going to vote for X, Y, or Z reason? Non-voters that need to understand the issues with not voting.
I would love to hear from Ruby on this as the resident young person, not including Brie.
I'm getting old.
It's an interesting one, and I think it's one that sometimes I even struggle with, because when people get into that mindset, particularly young people, like you never want to push the blame onto a generation that's grown up with such a lack of hope around anything, that's had just political failure after failure. Like, it's understandable why they're disenfranchised, but disengaged. But I think sometimes when people say that, they're saying I'm not going to vote because, all politicians are horrible because this thing happened and that was really upsetting for me. And the response I'd usually give is, well, the only way to change that is for you to go and vote. And there's always going to be flaws with it. But the second we stop engaging, they win. And I think sometimes it is really just as simple as that. If we stop voting or even trying, this is what they're doing now when we're actively opposing everything and mobilizing in a way that we haven't seen in ages. Can you imagine what they'd be like if there was just silence? And I think things like pay equity, where the pushback hasn't been as big or as loud or picked up by the media, then I know a lot of us would like to see. We've seen how they've been able to just completely bulldoze it over, just without any regard for the people that it affects.
I think a good, to kind of piggyback on that. The thing I'll always kind of point to is the fact that historically, high voter turnout usually means good things. And I'm just talking good things in general. High voter turnout is to me, a metric that people have won the election, not necessarily politicians. And I'm even including in past elections where the party that I might not have wanted to win won, but there was high voter turnout, because when that happens, that political party suddenly feels pressure to us because they know we're paying attention. They know that we are mobilized. And when
it also gives you more representative government.
Yeah.
More people vote, you get what people vote for.
Exactly. And I find this kind of, what I find very interesting about the people who kind of aren't engaged is it usually falls on one of two extremes of the spectrum. There is one extreme where I'm very sympathetic to, of a kind of the marginalized who feel kind of disenfranchised because successive governments haven't kind of met the moment, so to say. And it has made them more and more kind of cynical and jaded, and there's kind of this kind of hopelessness of what's the point. Although I think they're wrong, that's a wrong conclusion to come to. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not sympathetic to it. And then there's the other extreme of people who kind of live in such privilege that politics doesn't affect them and that they don't need to show up. And
Are you thinking of like a construction builder person from, say, Christchurch, who mummy and daddy gave him a really big company and now he thinks he's a smart boy?
I wonder. He spat the dummy at me. For those of you who don't know, yeah, he did. He called me a loser, and that broke my heart, guys. That Matthew Horncastle thinks I'm a loser. I don't know how I'm going to recover from that.
Could he not think of anything like more insulting?
I know. I was kind of like, really?
Get better at bullying, bro.
Yeah. But what did it? Here's what did it. This is so stupid. I don't know if this is like podcast quality, but I got into his comment section in one of his cooked posts. And I didn't engage with what he was saying. I just asked, can you just tell, it was a message to his parents. I'm like, Mr. and Mrs. Horncastle, would you say you gave Matthew too much positive reinforcement or not enough? As a parent, I don't want to make the same mistakes. That's what really set him off. He did like 20 posts afterwards where he talked about left-wing men, and because he didn't want to say my name. But
oh my God. That actually kind of brings me really nicely to the next question, though. What are some strategies to cut through the spin and outright lies and minimize the impacts of bots and cookers without actually engaging?
Definitely block obvious bots, because that just helps, keep everyone in your comment section safe and that kind of thing.
That's the keyword, safety,
Yeah, but, honestly, even things that we say, look it up yourself and check that we're not just spinning bullshit at you. Because could be, but just check, even as simple as a lot of the time how I find my news is I type Education NZ into Google and I click the news button. Literally, like, just do that.
On a slow news day, I'll click Ryan Bridge.
I haven't come across a news day that slow for my liking.
But yeah, definitely block the bots. And that, again, just to piggyback on what Bree said, oftentimes they're usually hackers. That something kind of tricky they try to do is they'll kind of try and pull private information out of you. Like if you say if you comment on somebody's post for whatever reason, they might say, and what in your personal life have you done for X, Y, and Z? And then you tell them that, and suddenly you're in a bad place. You get into this really toxic vortex. So yeah, it's very important that you just block the bots. That's as for the cookers, yeah, it's kind of what I said before. Block them as well. And again, comes down to the fact that for whatever reason, a video that was not meant for them showed up on their page. And yeah.
Like, they're not going to convince the Horncastles of the world to change their views. You know?
You can't change hearts and minds when they have neither a heart nor a mind to begin with.
Ruby, I'm actually kind of curious to get your perspective on this one as well. As somebody who has grown up with the internet, unlike me, who used to plug it into a wall jack and it would scream at you before you were allowed to connect. So I'm really curious, as somebody who's grown up in this kind of environment where this kind of behavior online is not uncommon, how do you take the attitude? What do you do as sort of a natural response to this kind of feedback from people? Do you look at it in a slightly different way to the way that you've seen other people approach it?
I think a lot of young people take the stance of some may call arrogant, of just like, I don't know you. Like, I just don't respond. 9 times out of 10, if someone's put like a whole paragraph in my comment section, I don't have time. And I think sometimes, like, since we've grown up with social media, it's quite easy for us to really have that perspective, feel really secure, and like, I literally don't know these people. I don't owe them anything. At the end of the day, obviously, honesty and accountability online, sure, but just because they've commented on one of my videos, I'm not obligated to respond to that. And I think that's one of the strengths that our young people have. I mean, there's pros and cons to young people being on social media, particularly that kind of younger age group that they're looking of banning. But I think sometimes the education they can get and that experience of normalizing these things from such a young age, they do have a really good understanding of these are just strangers on the internet. And in terms of people saying things that aren't true or outright lies, there's so many people who will just comment numbers that they've whipped up out of their head, and you go to search all this research paper that they've referred to and it doesn't exist. And so I think, half the time it's just double checking or not engaging.
One of my recent assignments was just doing a briefing to the Prime Minister on the social media ban. And that's exactly the point I ended up making, Ruby, was that we know that there's a lot of negatives to social media for young people, but there's also a lot of benefits. And those seem to be getting overlooked, especially for rural communities or people in smaller towns, to have that connectivity and access to schooling and access to all sorts through the internet. It is really
totally. And on that social media ban, just because it's my favorite topic ever, we've been put in this position where it seems to be they've managed to convince the public that the argument is either it's social media ban or no social media ban, and those are the only 2 options we have to address digital harm as an issue. And it's so easy. Whenever a young person says, I oppose the social media ban, they go, of course you do, because you want to be on your phone. And it's how did we get to this place? The answer to these kind of things has never been just delaying the effects. It's always education. But that's not what the government wants to hear. So
but a rich person who owns a slave factory in China says it's bad. Why shouldn't we listen to them? Actually, I have a question for you that wasn't put through here. Somebody asked me this one yesterday. And to be honest, I hadn't actually given it much thought until it was asked of me. We all deal in relatively high pressure topics. When you're dealing with politics, it's people's lives. You're dealing with politicians who get angry. You're dealing with people who are very passionate about what they see and hear, and that can be really overwhelming sometimes. What do you do to unwind and make sure that you don't burn out?
Cry.
Oh.
I cry regularly, but I'm
Yeah.
very comfortable crying, and
Yeah.
I would say that's something my partner's helped me a lot with, like acknowledging that, you know, my emotions have to come out somewhere, and this is a good, healthy way to do it. And I also sing a lot, and I think that helps get my emotions out, but just not being afraid to be a bit upset. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you get a lot of hate. Sometimes, you know, I'm very resilient, but yeah, have a good cry when you need it.
Yeah, somebody broke me the other day when they said that I'm the left equivalent of Ryan Bridge and that I should stop being mean to him. That broke me. If you guys want to know a quick way to hurt my feelings, it's comparing me to that rube. No, but like I usually just I think there is a lot to say for silence. And that's almost kind of like a parent thing. I will sometimes just, I usually use car rides as an opportunity to just make sure that I don't have anything on, there's nothing on. My phone's not on, the radio's not on. I just have silence. And I think there's a lot to say for that. Like before I did this, I was always kind of looking to get distracted, blah, blah, blah. But, try and find opportunities to be present as well. Try and find opportunities to not take your phone places. You have to take your phone almost everywhere these days. Those kind of times where you don't need your phone, maybe don't take it. Yeah, that would be kind of what. And like to piggyback on what Bree said, it can be quite emotionally exhausting. It can be. These are very heavy topics, and I'm not going to lie. The gravity of what we do is not lost on me, because you're right. We are dealing with in people's lives. What we are advocating for is something that is going to be consequential to people, and we're all doing this because we think that it's going to net positive consequences. And so there is a degree of, there is this kind of weight of responsibility that you feel. And, like I did a post last year, and it was about kind of the transactional relationships between the private prison industry and our politicians. And I did a big breakdown on how it goes back decades. And I was it's one of those videos that I was really hoping would break through, because it was one of those topics that I really wanted people to know about. And then it didn't do anything. And at that time, I was just so gutted, because I'm like, okay, so I did something wrong. I dropped the ball here, and now people don't know this important information. And if you can, like, that is a mental space that I do try to avoid. So yeah, it's quite a big question there.
Yeah, it took me by surprise. How about you, Ruby?
Yeah, I don't know. It is quite a hard one. It's so situation dependent. I think for me, in terms of getting like hurtful comments and hate, I think it's very difficult to offend me and things like that. I will just laugh my ass off. I think sometimes I find it funnier than the person who's commented it. But I think stuff with that as well, like telling other people, being like, oh, look what this person's put, and half the time they're going to think that's just as insane, and you can have a laugh about it, and I think that makes it so much easier to be able to just laugh about it with somebody else and just let it brush over. But like you guys touched on as well, we deal with a lot of heavy topics. I mean, I joined a political party when I was 15, and I think the social media around politics is kind of the same, in the sense of people often will come to you with quite heavy stories, and that's same when you're representing a politician, or whether you're on the internet. People want to tell you about what they're going through because they're looking for support, and it's just, I guess, sometimes having to remind yourself that there's nothing I can do to change the outcome of that story that they've just told me, but sometimes just listening is enough, and half the time people are coming to you just so that they can feel heard, and you've actually achieved exactly what they were looking for in listening to that story and taking it on board. And again, sometimes, like you say, it's something you just need to take time for yourself for, something to sleep on. And then often I find 24 hours later, you can turn that into motivation to keep going and keep fighting for the people who need change.
And sometimes it takes like 5 people reaching out with those individual stories for you to notice a pattern to then be able to actually call that out,
Totally.
you know? Yeah.
Great answers. Right, I'm going to do this as a bit of a speed round because I'm just saw what the time is. We've been going at this for 90 minutes so far. So this stuff here is all stuff I've actually spoken to a couple of researchers around disinformation on, because I wanted to get expert advice on particularly how these platforms work so that people can be aware of it if they're using them. And these are the 4 biggest use platforms in the country. Are there other platforms that you guys are on?
No, just the first 3: Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. I'm not on X.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid X.
Bring Bebo back.
Yeah, bring back Bebo. Remember Bebo?
I was like
Bebo.
a bit too young for it, but I always loved that you could change your background.
Bebo was the shit. Bebo was... You got to rank
your heart to people, eh?
Yeah, you had to rank your friends. I remember.
Yeah.
That was funny. Like there was like a top 16 ranking for friends, and you would. I can't believe that, man. But yeah, X is one of those things. Like I know I'm going to be on it eventually. I know I'm probably going to have to be on it. I'm trying to avoid it. I'm trying to hold off
Any of you on
on
Blue Sky?
Sorry.
Are any of you on Blue Sky?
No.
No. Okay. Was it Discord? Because I don't. We're streaming live to Discord, I think, at the moment. If I remember
Just
correctly.
to play Club Penguin with my best friends.
All right, so I've got some facts for you from disinformation researchers about each of these platforms and how they work specifically to push bullshit so that people can be aware of how they get manipulated by political parties going into the election. So when it comes to Facebook, this is the one that is most likely to be used for repeating bullshit claims. So that's why the National Party will pull out a bullshit line, and then all of their MPs will pull out the same bullshit line and repeat it over and over, because it's a bit of an echo chamber audience. It's captured. People who follow the page and people who follow the people who follow the page are going to see that same message. As like advertising, you have to see it several times before it starts to sink in. And your average audience member on Facebook tends to be what they call older, which I don't know what that actually is, but they're more likely to engage with content that's about being tough on crime and cost of living messaging than anything else. Is that consistent with what you guys have come across on your platforms?
Yeah. Short answer, yes. Especially the echo chamber.
If we repeat it enough, then does that make it true?
Yeah.
Yes.
Another feature with Facebook, and I suppose you could say this about Instagram, but not really TikTok. I know I've been hating on TikTok, but like Facebook, and this is why Facebook is quite a hard platform to fight this information on, is that you can get just as much traction with sharing the same post 2 or 3 times without diminishing returns. Whereas in TikTok, if I kind of post a video that I did last week, if I post it again the next week, it's not going to make any traction because the algorithm on TikTok has already seen my video be posted, and it's not going to get the same traction on TikTok. Facebook, you can post and repost over and over, and there's not going to be any diminishing returns. It's going to keep going out to the eyes that it's going to go out to. That's why it's quite hard to fight disinformation on Facebook, because it's such a gauntlet.
Yeah. All right. Next one is TikTok, actually. So the problems that we've got here is that it's really good for rapid fire bullshit claims. And you guys would have seen this with probably the National Party with their TikTok presence, or Chris Luxon's presence specifically. Really good at going da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da and rattle off a whole bunch of bullshit, because it's driven by personality over message, which makes it really hard to go in afterwards and go, here is something he said and it is wrong, or this is something he's going to say and it will be wrong. I know we all have TikToks here. Is this something that you guys have struggled with as well, with the ability of trying to minimize the impact of the bullshit from the other side?
I think so, and I think especially like you say with that personality driven over messages, and I mean I currently only post on TikTok, a little bit on Instagram, about to hopefully get on Facebook. But I think it was interesting as well because before National did this, UK Labour did this to the UK Conservatives, and it's who gets in there first, who can get in there and be like, see, we're gonna be hit down with the kids and we're gonna have a laugh on TikTok. And if you look, most of Christopher Luxon TikToks, the Democrats are actually doing amazing on TikTok right now because they just make memes about Donald Trump all day. And the politicians that you see succeeding on a platform like TikTok, none of them are talking about policy. The ones who are doing well are chucking water at each other, and making silly videos because that's what engages.
Gavin Newsom comes to mind. Gavin Newsom. Does anybody follow him? Has anybody heard of his antics on Twitter? So he kind of is what Ruby was discussing. What Gavin Newsom does is, and by the way, I'm no Gavin Newsom supporter. I think, he's just your typical corporate den, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the same as just your typical national politician over here. However, his attacks on Trump are so effective because all he does is type with the cadence of a Trump tweet. So he'll use really big capital letters. He'll say, he'll write in the style of Donald Trump's messages to make fun of Trump. And it's extremely effective and also pretty funny. I think what he does, I've got a suspicion. I think he'll write the actual tweet he wants to write. He'll put it through AI and say, if Donald Trump were to write this, how would it be written? And then he posts that. That's my suspicion. And it's very effective. But yeah, it's definitely personality driven over message driven. I think I can probably, knowing everybody's work in the space, I think we all know that. And also I think that has kind of made us better as content creators because we knew that already. And whenever we kind of get on TikTok especially, we understand that personality is going to drive our content, and it kind of just makes us better from a presentation standpoint. Yeah.
Cool. All right, next one, Instagram. More subtle use of bullshitting. This is the one that I was told you can use AI the most on and get away with, because people look at it and then you hide bullshit in the description. They're not looking at the description, they're looking at the picture. So you're more likely to get a simple image with a caption, and it's the caption that implies something that's incorrect. And the use of AI images here, because AI images are designed with a really specific aesthetic that they're looking for, that they know is going to engage with their audience, it helps reach further than just like a standard photo of Chris Luxon out, I don't know, shaking hands with people or pretending he knows what a cow is. So it's got a lot more possibility and potential of being more misleading than people realize. Are you guys all on Instagram?
Yep.
I think because the explore page, because the explore page is mainly just photos. Like that's kind of what I do. I go on the explore page and just look at memes. But like I don't really read the captions, so I think you're right that I could see how you could hide your main messaging in the caption because I'm just looking at the photos. Yeah,
it's almost subliminal.
Isn't it such a good way to take things out of context as well, because they can literally just like clip a photo or a screenshot from a video and people will go like, oh look, so and so did that, and it's like there's no context in that, whatever that is, a single photo.
Which is something that National love to do. Out of context information is like a cornerstone of their campaign, I'm sure, because Simeon's in charge of their campaign and context is not his friend. All right, X or Twitter. This is, you might have noticed this over the last couple of weeks, X is the testing ground to see which bullshit will fly. I'm sure there's one or two examples that you guys can think of with this. It has high use at the moment for the hard right, but it's clearly still influential enough to influence our media. And it is the site that the far right cry about when it's ignored. So they think it's important. Since you're not on X, do you guys have any interactions with people from there? Or have you seen the impact of what X can do with that right-wing kind of sphere of influence?
I can say that I have had the pleasure of having somebody very prominent from X take exception to one of my Facebook posts, one Annie O'Brien. And
Who's she?
so if you were to ask David Seymour, he's some lady with a Substack.
Oh, okay.
David Seymour's words.
He'd declare a public holiday for her then.
Not my words, David Seymour's words. Some lady with a Substack, Annie O'Brien, and I'm sure this is going to get to her because she does watch our content. We know that she watches our content because, anyway. I posted on Facebook a few weeks ago as a response to some disinformation from National regarding funding that Labour apparently gave to gangs during their time in power. And I felt it was a pretty fair assessment I gave a pretty coherent, measured, data-driven argument that kind of proved that National were full of shit. And Annie took the article or the post, she made a video about it, she posted it on TikTok that none of us were able to see because she's blocked us all. But when she posted it to TikTok, TikTok ended up banning her for misinformation. So, boom.
Oh, no.
I know. I felt like, I'm like, this is the lady who almost took down Chris Hipkins. This is the lady who may very well at this point have taken down Mikey Sherman. And she ended up being taken down by one of my posts, and I didn't even know about it. So I was quite proud of myself. Unfortunately, TikTok saw fit to resume her account. But yeah, it goes to show. So that's been my only experience. I know that I do get spoken about in that space by the worst people on the internet in the country, people whose names I don't really have any interest in mentioning. So yeah. Have we lost Bree?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, the screen froze. I went into like saver mode.
Froze.
Was it frozen or was I just going?
No.
It could have been both. Who knows? But do either of you two have any experience with the content coming out of that cesspit?
I definitely don't.
Oh, sorry, you go.
You go for it.
Are you sure? So I think I'm not really on there much myself, but I was actually just I keep mentioning this, the Women Deliver conference, which is basically just like a massive feminist gathering. And we had the senator who was responsible for the social media ban in Australia, and she told a really interesting story around, and I'm pretty sure she said she wasn't even on the platform, but since it's become X, obviously all of their regulations have gone away, and you can quite literally say whatever you like, make whatever violent threats you like. And she got one tweet from Elon Musk calling her insane things, and she said, one tweet from him, that was it. And it's a platform now that is full of bots, full of AI users, and she was just obliterated with violent threats and, anything that you can imagine was said to her. And they're able to create this mass hysteria with these accounts that mostly don't exist. And from there, she was doxxed and all of these other awful things. But it's the way they're able to create numbers out of nowhere, which inspires the real people on that platform to then go and do the things, go and act on these threats that people are making.
That's another thing. Like, X is like, let's forget the fact that it's just full of the worst people, as Ruby mentioned. It's also just such a shitty experience. Like, it's a shitty social media experience. Like, it's all AI crap. It's all just M words and F slurs. That's all it is. It's just kind of the worst people on the planet letting their most toxic freak flags fly. And it's not something that I find particularly interesting. It's like, forget how abhorrent it is and how offensive it is and how dangerous it is. It's not an appealing experience. Like, I should note, I do technically have an X account. I've never posted on it. I don't even think I have a profile image on it, but I did start one with the intention of using it, but I just couldn't navigate the site. It was such a shitty site. It was slow. It kept freezing on me. It's not, so just from that point of view, I don't know why people even have accounts. There's so much better options.
I find it such a negative space. Like, anytime I've used Twitter, like, I've definitely had it when I lived in America, because a lot of the students that I went to school with had it. It's like quite a common social media in America compared to here. But I have always found it quite a negative space. It's easy to talk badly on there. It's easy to get stuck in sad, little depressing echo chambers. And also, I just don't like the new branding. Like, when it moved from the light blue Twitter sort of bird, little cute, to the sort of black and white X, like.
Yeah, I know. It's so, you're so edgy.
Yeah, but like black and white kind of monotone plain gives me very like website vibes. It doesn't give me like social media,
You know what
it gives,
that's a
it
good.
it gives email. It doesn't give.
I feel like X is the social media equivalent of that guy who would show up to the Halloween party dressed like Neo from the Matrix and would just act weird all night and show everybody his, sword swinging skills or some stuff like that. Like, that kind of has that energy to it. I don't know if anybody has seen that picture that it went viral of right-wing commentator Ben Shapiro dressed as Neo from the Matrix. That's what X feels like.
It feels like it's made for him. Now, somebody did ask, and I can't find the comment, it's buried in here, about YouTube. And the reason that YouTube's not on here is actually because it's not an overly well-used New Zealand social media platform. Really well used overseas, but it's more of an advertising revenue thing. The biggest thing to concern yourself with YouTube is actually YouTube Shorts, and how easy it is for that to grab people's attention and put bullshit in front of them. There are a number of right-wing creators who use YouTube, who are loved by groups like Voices for Freedom or Hobson's Pledge. I'm not going to mention names because I don't need to summon them. They're a bit like Pennywise. Who was the murderer? Candyman. A bit like Candyman. We're not going to do that. But that's one of the reasons why YouTube isn't considered a huge social media presence. It's a place you go to watch videos, but not so much for the social aspect of it. Right, next question we got for you. Well, this isn't so much a question, actually. This was a suggestion from some of the researchers on how to deal with the kind of bullshit you get in these places, and it's called the truth sandwich approach. Start with something that's true, and then warn about the lie, explain why the lie is wrong, and then reinforce the truth again. And you can do that in comments, you can do that in conversations, you can do that pretty much any way that you communicate. Does this sum up how you guys approach content?
Start with the verifiable truth. Warn about the lie. I would say so. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to be able to say I put this much thought and structure into
it. But how much then of what you're doing is instinct now?
Yeah, I think there is very much a subconscious element to this. Because you are always creating something for an audience. And here's the thing, for our word to have validity, we do need to kind of acknowledge true elements of the lie. There is going to be maybe one or two true elements. For example, let's go back to the Labour giving money to gangs example. The element of truth in that is that Harry Tam, who ran the Hard to Reach program, was a member of the mongrel mob. that is the true element. Now let's talk about all the bullshit that Labor are trying to, that National are trying to implicate Labor in. And then you kind of, and so, yeah, you do need to kind of, yeah, I think, and by the way, watching everybody else's content, I think even on a subconscious level, we do this. Yeah.
Cool. All right, in-person events. Now, Brie, I know you've been doing a lot of in-person events lately, different sorts of events, but what do you guys think is the best approach for an in-person meet? Because we've got a lot of Meet the Candidate events coming up, remember, if you need an MC. But we do have a lot of these events coming up. Have you guys ever attended a Meet the Candidates event?
Yeah, I've attended a few.
Yeah, I've emceed a couple.
The ones I've been to over many years, they're always packed with partisan shills, yelling and screaming and hooping and hollering when their candidate gets up. So, question for you, what is the best approach for an in-person Meet the Candidate event, and what should you be wary about at these events?
Like, would you be speaking from the lens of if you were a candidate or if you were us?
I think if you're us, yeah, as content creators, or even as a member of the public, just going along because you want to hear what your local candidates have to say because you've got to make a decision on who you vote for.
Like, truthfully, like I at the kind of political events I've gone to, I'm quite actually, like, big crowds I find quite intimidating, and I always look for a corner to stand in. But I'm taller than the average person, and I usually end up standing out anyway, so there's very little places for me to hide. So yeah, what you should be wary of, usually, and from what I've seen, is there's always going to be one or two kind of people who will who kind of have ambush questions, who kind of have questions to kind of try and stump an opposing candidate. Maybe it could be a question that is something that has to do with very obscure policy that they'll ask a candidate, and the candidate might not know all the details of it, and they'll be kind of like a way to trip them up. That's usually what I've seen.
I think as like from an organizer and MC perspective, I think one of the things that I've found has been really helpful is, I think the main thing as something to be wary of is, like we say about plants, and as like the party members and the campaign teams that are there. I think one of the things that we've done that has worked really well in the past is, I forget what the app's called, but you know, the one where you can put the QR code up and then everyone has to put their questions through that and you can filter it and choose the appropriate ones yourself. I think that's really good for creating balance. From an activist, I know also a lot of people watching are probably on campaign team kind of perspective. I think it's all about what's the best way to utilize this experience, because sometimes it's a good place to be able to go up and ask a really straight, difficult question that makes the right look awful. But sometimes it's the best thing you can get out of it is sitting in the back and listening to the response they're getting, trying to feel the vibe of what people feel. And you can't do that if you're stood up, trying to push your point. So I think it's really about knowing what's the best way that I can utilize this experience and use it to help us.
I'll also mention something that you've also got to be wary of is sometimes when a politician doesn't know the answer to a question, they'll resort to some kind of cooked phrase or ad hominem attack to kind of try and derail everything. You've got to be prepared for that.
I saw that in 2023, and the phrase was, "We're not going to agree to co-governance," wink, wink. And like, it was a literal wink to the audience. Yeah. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And that was from National. And he got elected. Yeah. North Shore.
Yeah.
I do have some advice here from the experts as well about in-person events, because I personally think it's really important we get out and we hear our candidates speak, because any content you get online, whether it's from us or from them, is going to be shaped around a certain narrative. So if you get a chance to talk to them, you get a chance to hear their perspective. So they said to point out that you can approach moderators before an event to ensure they have fact checks or a process for points of order or corrections, because that bullshit line can be pulled out by pretty much anybody. But also to remember that most of these events, they're not run by big organizations, they're run by community groups. So the moderators are generally volunteers. They're not there to fact check. They don't know the facts themselves. They're not professional debate coordinators. So they may not have a process in place. They just want people to hear what the candidates have to say. So it's always good to have that conversation before you start with the organizers so that they know it's something that they should be setting or be concerned about, but also so that you can be rest assured as to how their process is going to work.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good info.
And then they've also given me 4 things that you should use if you get stuck in that kind of situation where you've got a candidate on the dais saying something really stupid. And you don't, they've got angry people there who are on their side and getting all racked up. So this is what they call de-escalation through curiosity. Ask for verification of data and its source. If somebody says something like, 49,000 fewer victims of violent crime, what's the source of that? How do you verify that? Bring receipts. If you've got physical copies of data sources, it's much harder for them to say that they don't exist because you can show it to them during the debates. Record and timestamp. So if you can, because not every place is going to allow you to record. Some places do record themselves and put it up online. I know my local community group, local Resident Ratepayers Association did that last time. They recorded the debate that they had, they stuck it up online, and it was great for me to be able to pull content and go, these are the lies that they're telling you. So record and timestamp is a really good one. And follow-up, use a 2-part question, state the fact, and then ask about the impact of their lie. Like you have said you want criminals who had a conviction years ago to keep that conviction. Mr. Uffendale, what do you think is the impact of that on people being reminded that crimes follow you around forever? So I hope people are taking notes on this at home.
I would also add, be prepared that when you try these techniques, if you get the right politician, they're probably going to call you out as being woke, as being biased. Yeah. If you're, they'll try and throw everything to kind of, again, derail you, to kind of get you to lose your train of thought. It does seem to be the new kind of tactic of many populist politicians.
I love saying to them after that, what does woke mean? I'm sorry, I don't know the term.
Sushi.
Yeah, sushi and quinoa. Definitely. All right, I promise we're getting near the end of this. What are some of the easy to remember sites that you guys know of that we can direct undecided voters to, or the best places to get online resources?
I'll start. Our friend Paul, I believe you've got a website that is a kind of it's a site that can kind of get you to kind of understand which parties may be best aligned to your policies. Have I got that right?
Yeah, it's got that on there. It's election2026.co.nz. There's a huge range of tools like that. You can go through and say what policies you like and go, oh, this is the party that has those policies. Or you can go through and go, these are the values that I've got, and it measures the policies and that fit those values and tells you what sort of party that you want to go for. It's got fact checks on there. It's got tracking data on there that we're following at the moment, like opinion polls as an aggregate, so people can see how other people are feeling. Data resources around things like unemployment rates, the number of police officers, which keeps going down, the number of gang members, which keep going up. So there's a lot of data and resources there. Actually, somebody mentioned to me this the other day. They wanted a place that we could go to, which you could see everybody's details. Like every time somebody puts up content, like every time you guys put up content, it comes through into one place so they can access it. But, videos, podcasts, all that. That's a tough one to build, but I kind of love the idea of having this live feed of this person has said this.
That would be cool with MPs as well, if there was like an MP feed. Yeah. And then you could see who's like doing the same posts again and again and again, and what's just a repeat. And that's a great idea. Yeah, good luck with that, Paul.
It's not like I don't have free time. Do you guys have any other resources that you use?
I love Vote Compass. I'm a Vote Compass truther. I know it will be outdated now, but hopefully they'll renew it for the new election. It's funded by like TVNZ, and it's just that's the one when we go out door knocking. That is the first one I always would point people to, because like most people are voting based on the debate they've seen or just genuinely how they feel. But the second you get their how they feel about policy, for them to be able to see what that means for each party, what party actually aligns with them from a policy perspective, that's really where you can change minds really quickly in an evidence-based way.
There is a big epidemic of people voting for the wrong parties. And what I mean by that is that they have their certain kind of policy preferences, but they're voting to the parties whose political project run counter to those policy preferences. There's a big problem with that. If everybody were to use things like the political compass, as Ruby mentioned, or the kind of what Paul has on election 2026, we would have, I feel, election results that were more reflective of our values. Yeah.
All right. Some of the resources that the experts told me to suggest as well that people can use from home, using reverse image and video search to check to see if new footage is old content being recycled or content is being used out of its original context. That's a really important one, especially when you have at least one party who takes things out of context on purpose and tries to put it out there and then accidentally makes the opposition look cool. Lateral reading is one that people can use, basically checking to see what other reputable sources have to say about such things. So a party makes a claim like, we're absolutely brilliant, and then you read something online that says opinion polls say they absolutely suck, from an organization that you can actually trust instead of their own pages, because every page is going to be biased. And then bot detection, looking at highlighting patterns of coordinated inauthentic behavior, like multiple accounts posting the same word-for-word comments really close together, weird spaces and punctuation use, or prolific accounts with AI images and no friends, which is something that you guys have already identified. When we look at the next 6 months ahead of us, what do you guys think is the biggest thing that people should take away about how to prepare for it?
Enroll.
Just don't believe everything you see, guys. Sometimes it's bots. Make sure you fact check everything yourself if it doesn't sound right.
Yeah, know your facts, right? Like, be prepared, because like this is going to be such a close election, and it's going to be the people are so sick of just taglines and slogans. They're done. And so if you're having a conversation with politics about people, we're in a time where they're going to be asking you for the statistics to back that up. And just in general, like we've been saying this whole time, there's so much misinformation coming from those right-wing parties around right now. We're about to see a fear-mongering immigration campaign from the ACT Party. And the most important thing we can do, as a British person, we've seen this happen in the UK. And the best way you can counter those kind of things is facts in context, because the facts that are going to be spat back at you are going to be completely out of context.
I'm going to show my kind of nerd. I'm going to give my nerd bona fides here. I am going to give a quote from the graphic novel Superman for All Seasons from Perry White. He's got a great quote, and I think it applies here. Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see, and everything you share. That's what I would kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
You like that?
Pop culture. So woke. So woke. All right, we're going to finish things up with our sticky question. We do a sticky question each week, Ruby, or each month, that's designed to make people think and go, and is not always easy to answer. This one is from me. I actually had this particular issue myself this week. So I recently gave a guest lecture to a group of young voters who were highly engaged and informed around the election. However, they had some gaps in their knowledge, like not realizing that the ACT Party had successfully argued to keep their party president's name out of media for being a child molester in 2023. The new voting rules mean that those whose details aren't up to date by October 25 can't vote, or that MPs like Sam Uffindale and Barbara Kuriger had done some really dodgy shit. Because it feels like an onslaught of awfulness at times, do these gaps in someone's knowledge create a problem when it comes to keeping people informed and getting them out to vote? Who would like to have a go at tackling that one first?
I can. I'm always the one who goes, oh, go on, I'll go first. Well, I think it's something I actually talked about when I went and visited Selwyn College quite a lot. Like, it's really important that we talk to each other, and especially in this world of AI, it's really important that we talk to each other and we get each other's perspectives on things that we hear or things that we've heard, and in a way kind of gossip with each other, because that's how you hear stuff like this, is through a little bit of gossip. And it's not like gossip in bad taste kind of thing, but I just mean, if we are going onto the internet and we can't trust that everything that we see is true, if half of it's AI, we can't fact check half of it, then we do need to rely on each other to find out information and to fact check and to each other's lived experiences. So yeah, I think keep talking to each other and keep gossiping with each other, because we're entering a world where it's going to be really hard to discern what's real and not. And we need to continue to socialize with each other. That's what I'd say.
Yeah. What I would say is that if you are in the space, you do, especially as you grow bigger, especially as your following grows, you do have a bigger responsibility. You need to make sure that you have the correct information, and you need to be prepared to be relentless. Be relentless. Do not give these guys an inch. We have to kind of reconcile with the reality that for the next 6 or so months, we are in fight mode. You need to be vigilant. You need to kind of, and this is more of a message to people who exist in our space, be relentless. Do not give them an inch when it comes to posting bullshit. If they have, because they're going to try it, and if it doesn't succeed the first time, they're going to try it a second time. 3 times this week did they try to peddle the line that National are tough on crime because of the stalker bill. 3 times they got Paul Goldsmith to sit there in his crisp white shirt with his legs crossed, holding a flat white, taking credit for Tamitha Paul's work. The first time they did it, I made sure, I made sure that everybody knew what Paul was doing here. And the second time he did it, I did it again. Third time he did it, I did it again. You've got to be just as relentless as they are. Yeah. That would be my advice there.
Want to take a stab, Ruby?
Sure. I think to answer the question, I think it creates a real problem, right? Because especially in kind of populist areas, people who aren't that really engaged in politics, they're constantly sold this lie that all politicians are evil, they're all criminals, they're all being brought out, taking donations, they're all corrupt. And I mean, we know that some of them are, examples like this. And when people are confronted with these facts, if they don't know about it and they find out after that person is elected, if it's always kind of been knowledge, that just to them reaffirms that this lie that they've been sold is true, and here's the evidence to back it up. And that's really where we can see people disengage and stop voting. And so we really need to be trying to reclaim the narrative on that and use this as evidence as to why people need to be going out to vote. Because there are other options, and really being able to see, here's a trend, they all seem to be from this side of the house or from this party, and the way we can get rid of them is to do this. And like I say, a lot of this just comes down to context and adding more context and making sure we take control of that narrative. The other thing that I will add, coming up to this election, obviously voter involvement is so important. With the 2-week ban, it's going to be even more important. There's so much focus on that. But the place where the left fall down time and time again is that our voters don't go out and vote. We see this every single election. The people who are going to vote National are always going to vote. The people who are going to vote ACT always go and vote, which is why we don't see them out door knocking very often. But the Labour, the Greens, the TPM voters, that is why we all run such strong DVC campaigns, is because they do not go out to vote. So involvement is important, but just as important is making sure those people actually go and vote. If you have an elderly neighbour, offer to drive them to the polling station, because that turnout, enrollment isn't going to be enough this year because lots of people will enroll and they won't go and vote. We need to actively be making sure that not only are they on the election roll, they are there on election day.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also add, and this is kind of to, if you are somebody with a son, if you are somebody with a boyfriend, make sure you pull their ass out of the house to make sure they're voting, because those dudes are not showing up. Demographically, when you look at the data, young men are the ones who are overrepresented and not showing up to vote. So again, if you have a teenage boy in the house, girls, if you have a boyfriend, get them out to vote, get them out to enroll. Yeah.
Brilliant. Right. I'm going to go through some super chats real quick. Laura here has said, I want voters to that think their vote will make a difference, not bombarding them with drama that could potentially disenfranchise them. They don't need to know every drama nugget. And I think that's a big thing that I forget sometimes, is that, oh my God, did you hear about such and such? It's juicy, it's engaging. So, but they're really bad at their job is a really good message for us.
I would also I would push back to a degree, because you've got to understand, and we were talking about this before, a lot of there have been plenty of moments where those salacious kind of drama, scandal-filled elements, they do speak to the character of the candidates, they speak to the wider character of the party. We saw with Uffendale everything that our Prime Minister was willing to forgive, despite all the evidence. It was a real big character moment for our Prime Minister, just as much as it was Uffendale, because we saw what Christopher Luxon is willing to look past. So I do think most of the time, not most of the time, but there are moments with these salacious dramas where there is relevance to it. Yeah.
We've got this one from Andrew, just saying, good show tonight. Thanks. Completely back it up. I thought our show was brilliant tonight.
Cheers.
And got a couple of super stickers here from Robert Hurd. They don't tell me what the stickers are. They just say super stickers. All right. And I got a question here from Gold. Should we wear our Ditch the Pricks 26 merch to these events? What about tax work less, tax wealth more merch? Yeah. How do you guys feel about seeing merch like that show up to events?
Especially the latter. I love that phrase, tax work, not wealth. I think it's one of the best political slogans I've heard in years. I want to hear it more.
Sounds like a conversation starter.
Yesterday, somebody had that shirt.
Sorry?
At the event I was at yesterday at the podcast summit, somebody there did have that shirt. Cool. Michael, who I've worked with in the past, wonderful guy. But he was sitting in the back row, and I'm just like, I love seeing that shirt there. I should also, because BHN, this is, you go to BHN store, bhnshop.nz if you want to grab any of that merch. I'm not going to say anything about deals because I don't know what deals they have going on at the moment, but I know that there are some deals there, particularly around things like the badges, which I should probably have worked out how to get to the badges first. Catalog, is that it? Okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Go to BHN shop. It is awesome seeing these things out in public as well, because you can just be like, oh my God, that person, I know that person, I share something in common with them.
Yeah.
So
I still get stoked when I see a Toi Tu Te Tiriti sticker on someone's car. I'm like, love it.
Yeah. Right. We've been at this for over 2 hours. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we sign off and say goodbye to everybody?
I'd just like to say thank you very much to Ruby Love Smith. She was a real trooper. She came on the show on very short notice, and I think we can all agree she has been a great addition. I have
a button for this. I actually have a button for this here.
Oh.
And intense. It says here, applause intense. I'm like, yeah, totally deserved. Thank you so much, Ruby.
Thank you, Ruby.
Ruby's been fantastic, and Ruby, I would hope that there are future appearances in your future on the podcast and the BHN in general.
No, thank you for having me.
Nate was right. We want you as Prime Minister.
But it's been good. I think I've said this to Pat before last time I was on BH, and it's nice to be invited because often when we're invited onto things like this, we're expected to come on and purely talk about youth issues, and that is great and that's really important. But we also know how to talk about the economy. Young people know just as valid in general political conversations. So it's really refreshing to be able to come and do something like this and have some kind of like broader discussions and bring that perspective without it all just being super youth focused.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm going to leave everybody on is if you haven't done so already, please encourage everyone you know to go to vote.nz and check your enrolment details. If you are not enrolled by October 25, which is Labour weekend, you do not get to vote this year. So please ensure you are registered and enrolled to vote. Everything is up to date so you can go in and we can ditch the pricks.
Great. I think there's no better place to end on.
Yeah. Right. I'll press the buttons. We'll play some music. I'll talk to you guys in a sec.